Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Modern Mystics podcast. I have the great pleasure today of interviewing Diana Vilas, the Cosmic Cheerleader, on the podcast. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about not just astrology, but how astrology is affecting us in 2020. I think all of us have questions about what is going on this year. And it's so wonderful to have the context and understanding that specifically Diana can bring to us. So Diana, thank you so much for being here on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. I was very excited to have you. And I would love it if we could actually start with just a general overview, really, of what is astrology, just in case some of my listeners haven't listened in before or they're unfamiliar. I want to give them a good foundation for our talk today.
Sure. Well, there are many misconceptions about astrology. And when you begin to study astrology, you learn that it's almost an infinite subject. You cannot just do it superficially by sun sign. You really need to delve into the depths, because that's where the true significance of astrology lies. And there's an attempt now to recreate astrology as a science. It is not a science, it is an art. It's an art of perception and interpretation. In the process of looking at what we call glyphs or symbols, the symbology of astrology, it exercises our intuition. And so we need to look at it as an art and not a science. How does it work? Well, on one hand, each planet, every object in the cosmos has an energy field, and it emits energy, but we can't look at it as cause and effect. The relationship between astrology and what's happening on our planet is acausal. In other words, Pluto isn't wreaking havoc, but Pluto is creating a contest. It's a context. It's synchronicity. So, for instance, when we cast a chart at someone's birth,
right,
it's the moment they come into existence, there's a map of the heavens. And this map is a map of the consciousness of the individual. Its potentials, possible pitfalls, and then it all evolves as the planets move around the zodiac in what we call cycles. It's cyclical. And it also operates on the principle of archetypes. Carl Jung was the one who coined the phrase synchronicity, and he also was the one who brought archetypes into our conversation. I'm just going to talk briefly about Pluto, because Pluto is the main player. Pluto and Saturn are the main players in the heavenly realm right now.
For 2020, you mean? Pluto and Saturn are kind of, they're very much the archetypal energies that are setting the stage for what's happening at this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've known this, astrologers have known for years and have been anticipating what will happen. For instance, when Pluto and Saturn were conjunct in 1914,
World War I.
World War I.
Yeah.
We had the Spanish flu epidemic, which killed somewhere between 50 and 100 million people on the planet. We had the stock market crash and years of depression, and we also had a drought. I mean, it was a very serious time, and we can't blame Pluto for it. But the way Pluto works is through the unconscious. He clears the path for something new to emerge. He also is involved with releasing repressed material. Okay. And this is very important. When children, for instance, are abused, or when any of us experience something so traumatic that we can't handle it, we can't process it at the time, it gets stored in the unconscious. And Pluto is the function in consciousness that through timing releases this information back into consciousness, and at a time when we are mature enough and able to handle it.
Right.
You can see
Interesting.
that, yeah, and we can see that this is happening now. Pluto uncovers secrets,
Mm-hmm.
corruption, toxic situations. It's Pluto was in mythology the god of the underworld.
Right.
And Jung compared the underworld to the unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it was
we
essentially his metaphor for the unconscious.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And so Pluto brings up material from the unconscious. Look, for instance, at what's happening right now with Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we have repressed as a society is the toxic effects of racism.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We have never really taken a look at that. We weren't in our infancy as a country able to really see how toxic that could be. So it's coming up now, hopefully, so that we can process it appropriately, digest it, and integrate it in a way that is healthy and beneficial moving forward for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And essentially, what is going on right now is that humanity has reached a stage of development where we're ready to expand our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
We are right now immersed in an ego state. We have, uh, did you see the film 2001?
Oh, sure. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Stanley
Do you,
Kubrick, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Do you remember the scene where this ape-like creature is sitting and guarding a little water hole, and
Uh-huh.
he's playing with a bone, and suddenly he realizes the bone can be a weapon?
Oh, yes.
Remember
Right.
that?
Yeah.
That moment in that film was a metaphor, just like our Garden of Eden story is a
Uh-huh.
metaphor
Right.
for the awakening consciousness.
Right.
We moved out of an instinctual level of awareness into an ego state, into self-awareness. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what is the first thing Adam and Eve did when they became self-aware? They
They,
recognized their
their
nakedness.
nakedness, they cover themselves up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so as we entered the ego state, we became self-aware. But what has happened over the eons, and who knows when that exact moment in the shift in consciousness happened?
Mm-hmm.
Some say 200,000 years ago. I don't know. We don't know. But when that shift happened, um, the ego started to grow stronger and
Mm-hmm.
stronger. The
Mm-hmm.
purpose of the ego is to keep us safe.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes that job very seriously.
Would you say safe or would you say small?
Well, the ultimate result is small.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
It becomes a boundary, and that's where we are now. It's
Yeah.
a limit.
Right.
And we need to move into a realm beyond this not self-awareness, but self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
It has shifted as we abdicated more and more of our personal power. We gave it to the ego. So the ego wants to stay in power. Just
Mm-hmm.
look at our political system. Everybody wants to stay in power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the ego has taken more and more of our personal power in that we have given it away. And the ego recites to us the story of our lives. It's constantly telling us who we are, who everybody else is, how the world works. It's that monkey mind that's going on and on and on, telling us
Yeah.
this.
Reinforcing our belief systems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so through this self-protection, we build up defenses and we build up ways in which we interact with each other. We compete.
Mm-hmm.
We're fearful of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not sustainable. Obviously, we can't
Yeah.
continue this way.
I think we're
So,
seeing that on a pretty grand level. Yeah.
absolutely, we are. And as we become more and more polarized, um, I guess that brings me to, I wanted to speak about a scientist named I used to call him Prigogine, but it's Prigogine,
Uh-huh.
Russian name. He was a chemist, and he won the Nobel Prize in chemistry for what he called his theory of dissipative structures.
Mm-hmm.
And briefly, what that was all about was he looked at chemical compounds under an electron microscope.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And he added energy to it. Let's say he put this chemical compound in a beaker, and he put a Bunsen burner under it, and he heated it up. And as the heat increased, more and more energy went into it. And he observed it under this microscope. And what he saw, let's just for simplicity's sake, say that the structure was a grid.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, it was a fine mesh. And then as the energy was added to it, heated it up, the grid expanded and expanded and expanded until it could no longer contain the energy, and it exploded into spirals.
Right.
So his theory was that every system can become overwhelmed and unable to handle the amount of energy. The structure no longer suffices.
Right.
And the structure must break down so that we can evolve a new structure that can handle the new energy.
I feel like this has incredible implications on a couple of different levels, right? So as a yoga professional, when I hear you talk about applying heat to a system, we have a word for that called tapas, where we apply the tapas or the heat to our practice. This is the intensity, the doing of the thing. And that ultimately causes change or transformation. You know, we learn about it also in alchemy, that when you have that alembic, which is a closed beaker, essentially, and you've got something inside, you apply heat, and it inherently changes what's on the inside. And, you know, this transformation, this destruction of the system, it can feel terrifying. It can actually be terrifying. It can be destabilizing. It can be worrisome, or it can be quite a gift. Because if the old structures no longer hold, we have the opportunity to build a new one, which might actually be better. It might actually be more appropriate for whatever it is we're trying to contain, whoever it is we're trying to be. I think that psychological transformation works very much the same way, that we get this pressure to change, and our old ways of being, seeing, thinking, or doing are no longer appropriate or sustainable, and so we have to transform. And I love that right now the planets, astrology, is showing us or giving us the opportunity to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, a little more conscious of the change that we might be making, of the structures that we might be breaking down or shattering. So anyway, I always think of, you know, astrology as a psychology. And so to talk about this in terms of the psychological transformation or spiritual transformation, it's really exciting, actually, even though it's Pluto.
Well,
And Pluto can be
Pluto
quite
and
a challenge.
Saturn.
And Saturn. Oh, great. Yes, of course, Saturn.
So, and we're going to get to that in just one second. I just wanted to point out that we are pretty much a closed system right now. This pandemic has created an almost pressure cooker situation.
Yes, absolutely. I think we all feel that.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And it's all, you know, we're cooking. Right? And so this is where Saturn comes in. So what happened on January 12th is that Saturn and Pluto became exactly conjunct. Now, Saturn has been approaching Pluto for years, and so we have seen the changes, the potential. We've seen this polarization, and I brought up the polarization because it goes completely with Prigogine's theory. I mean, it's like the structure of our society is breaking down as we move further and further apart from one another. And everybody's saying, oh, we've got to put this back together. Well, it's going to self-organize. We could talk about self-organizing systems. That's another topic. But we will self-organize once we go through this transformation. But what's happening right now, what happened on January 12th is Saturn and Pluto conjuncted in the sign of Capricorn. Saturn is most comfortable in Capricorn. Mm-hmm. And Capricorn is about governments, institutions, politics, patriarchy. And what are we seeing right now but the rise of totalitarian governments all over the world? Mm-hmm. And the potential of it actually right in our own
backyard.
Backyard, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, as I said, Pluto is about transformation. We talk in psychology about the dark night of the soul. It's usually, if you were to look at someone's chart, Pluto has been activated and taken us deep down into our unconscious. And what we are being asked to do now is to bring all of this material, not even bring, it's coming up, to allow this material to emerge into consciousness, to take a good look at what's really going on and see what our reality is reflecting back to us about the state of our own psychic health and the health of our collective consciousness. And Saturn is the planet that wants to grow us up. We as a society are in an adolescent stage of growth. Mm-hmm. And I won't say this is the goal, but the next stage in our evolution is to become spiritual adults. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, we have to become aware of who we really are. We are not lowly, fallen, sinful human beings who are seeking some sort of spirituality or reunion with God.
Like we are not who the ego is telling us we are.
Exactly. And who we are told by our church, by our science. You know, science tells us it's a meaningless universe, that Darwin said we survive by being the strongest. It's turned us into a competitive society. What scientists are discovering right now is that we are not naturally competitive, we are cooperative. In fact, the whole universe is cooperative and we are interdependent. Yes. I have this vision of, at some point, a declaration of interdependence.
Oh, I like that.
And a new constitution built upon that principle.
It's beautiful. It reminds me, actually, have you seen the movie Avatar?
Oh my God, yes.
And the way that everything on that planet is so interdependent and they're able to actually tap into one another. That's like the vision that I see. That's how I imagine it, that we could actually evolve. I mean, I think we have the capabilities to do it now, but to have the level of empathy and compassion to truly connect with other people rather than feel separated from them.
Yeah. And when we realize that we are actually all made of the same stuff, that we come from the same source.
As Carl Sagan would say, we're all star stuff, right?
Exactly. And we are all spirit. And so when on a personal level, when you first realize that you are a divine being, learning how to be a human, learning how to function in a manifested reality, then that's going to shift everything for how you behave, how you think, what you do, and also how you perceive other people. When we begin to perceive each other as spiritual beings as opposed to fallen humans, we have to crawl over each other to get to the top. You know?
Yeah, as perceiving them as other at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So true. So with Saturn and Pluto together, Pluto, and I'm not going to say this is cause and effect, my language may indicate that, but Pluto creates a context in which things are going to break down. There will be death. And we've seen so much of that now. But it won't just be the death of individuals, it'll be the death of our paradigm. Paradigm does not sustain us. We have to come up with a new way of perceiving reality and perceiving each other. It's going to be the death of institutions. Hopefully, it'll be the death of our political system.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very strongly about a two-party system, which can do nothing but polarize us.
Mm.
There must be a better way. Now,
Mm-hmm.
here's the other thing. We can't really know. Think of the transformation of a butterfly. It lays its eggs. Caterpillars are hatched. They eat everything in sight. They create a cocoon. And then they begin to dissolve. And they don't know what they're going to become.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this stage in which they are nothing more than green goo. They have completely dissolved in their green goo. And if you were to cut open a cocoon at that point, ew.
That's pretty gross. Yeah.
Yes. But look what emerges, this amazing butterfly. I like to think of this is what's happening to humanity right
Yeah.
now. We're in the green goo stage.
But yeah, wow, green goo.
Yeah.
That's a great. I actually there's a little bit of freedom in that too, right? Because it's as I said before that in the green goo stage anything is possible. We don't yet know what we will become, and there isn't a predetermined structure, right? It's just possibility. I've always appreciated as well in the story of the butterfly, the next part, which is where when the butterfly begins to emerge, it actually has to like crack open the cocoon. And in pushing itself out, it's a very forceful, very effortful thing. And there's a lot of willpower and intention behind it. But the push of the emerging butterfly from this cocoon is what forces the fluid from the body of the caterpillar, the bug, into the wings to inflate the wings so it can fly. And if it doesn't have that fight, that struggle, if it doesn't have that incredible pressure, that that willpower, if it's not applied, like for example, if someone cuts open the cocoon to help the caterpillar out, it will simply fall to the ground because the wings have not been inflated.
Wow.
And I love that concept that, it is not always going to be easy. And especially, I think, when Pluto and Saturn are involved, right? It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be sparkles, rainbows, and butterflies. There will absolutely be struggle. And I think we're seeing people struggle now in a very physical and real life way with some of our social activist movements, in a personal way with all of this isolation, being in our own cocoons away from other people. So I just thought it would be worthy of mentioning because, what is happening now, as challenging, as horrible, as stressful, as anxiety producing as it may be, in many ways it's actually okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It is the process. And I think that a level of acceptance will help us to get ready for the push out of the cocoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Saturn is known for bringing us adversity.
Oh, isn't he though?
Yes. And the purpose of the adversity is to teach us patience, perseverance. These are the things we're learning right now. We are getting stronger within. We're developing inner strength. Look at how our patience has been tested. Look at what we've had to endure, and it isn't over. And I hope your readers won't be too disappointed, but it's not going to be over for a few more years.
Yeah. What does that cycle look like, Diana?
Okay. Well,
what are we in for? How much is how long is this green goo going to last?
Actually, it's going to start changing in December of this year.
Okay,
so
great.
There are some really positive things on the horizon. Before we get to that, I just want to say that what is happening with Pluto is that the United States is going to have a Pluto return.
Okay.
Now, when a planet returns to its place, especially when you're talking about the outer planets, when it returns to its initial place at the birth, and for the United States, that was 1776, there's going to be a reckoning. Okay, what have you done with this 250 years? And all of the things that we have not addressed are going to come up and must be addressed.
Mm.
And that's why we can see it now. I mean, I'm excited about the Black Lives Matter movement.
Me
I'm
too.
excited that so many people are aroused and supporting it. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing to see. But that's only one thing. We have a lot to atone for. Saturn is the planet of karma, and we have developed a lot of karma. We have genocide, the genocide of the Native Americans. We stole their land. We not only have racism, but sexism and homophobia and xenophobia. I mean, all of these things need to be addressed. But the good news is that in December, Saturn and Jupiter are going to form a conjunction in Aquarius. Now, for the last 200 years, Saturn and Jupiter have conjunctions every 20 years. They issue in a new social cycle, and they've been in Earth signs. So 200 years of Saturn and Jupiter in heavy Earth signs. The one that happens in December near the winter solstice will be at 0 degrees of Aquarius. I see it as sort of the kicking off, the initiation of the Aquarian age. Now, we aren't fully in it. We're in transition. But we are going to be moving more into it. And that's another topic, very exciting one, actually.
Yeah.
But they are going to be conjunct, and they're going to start a whole new cycle in Aquarius, which is about, what is Aquarius? The water bearer, the gifts to humanity. It's when we are going to start realizing that we are all one race, the human race. So that's exciting. And then on the horizon, coming up in 2022, Jupiter's going to be conjuncting Neptune. And that yes, that will be a big boost to our spiritual awareness, to our imagination, to our ability to dream a more beautiful future.
Yeah, it's like an enlightenment marker almost.
Absolutely.
I love that.
There is light on the horizon, and I think we will begin to see it lift in December, and hopefully it will shift in November. We'll see what happens.
Well, we will certainly keep our fingers crossed, Diana. I would love to see things start to shift. I mean, I think that, one of the things that I personally have been struggling with this year, as well as many of my students and listeners, is just the consistent, long-lasting heaviness of this green goo phase that we're in. It's a very unusual thing, I think, for us to just be consistently under this pressure, this challenge. I think when we probably, as people, have had challenging times in our lives, they have a duration and then they end. This feels at this time endless. So it's great to hear that, okay, December, the energy, the context begins to shift, and hopefully we will shift with it.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable.
Yeah.
It's the movement is mounting. I mean, just the fact, look at how your own business, how many more people are moving into yoga.
Right.
We had such busy lives. People didn't have time for yoga.
Yeah.
I'm hearing from so many people about they aren't sure they want to go back to the rat race.
Yeah.
They're enjoying the space. They're enjoying the quality of life.
Their own personal paradigm is shifting.
Yes.
Along with this greater social paradigm that is shifting. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for chatting with me today on the podcast. I've just enjoyed everything about our conversation. And before we wrap up, I wanted to just find out if you have any last little tidbits on what we can do to either work with Pluto and Saturn, or perhaps soften Pluto and Saturn at this time for ourselves.
Okay, so the key with Saturn is self-responsibility. We take responsibility for everything.
That's a good one.
And that means we don't blame, we don't point fingers, we don't wait for someone else to do it for us. And we take responsibility for our own consciousness, and we heal our past. Let
That's
go of our past. We can't let go until we heal. And so all of those resentments, all of those wounds that we've carried with us through our whole lifetime, it's time to focus on them, to take a deeper look. Meditation, I just can't stress that, how important meditation is, because that's the process of going into meditation and stilling it's like pausing your life and allowing some inner space to develop. Our inner space is so jam-packed with information and this monkey mind that's talking to us all the time, and the media that are coming at us. I mean, this is the heat, the energy, this constant influx of information, but we need to open up some inner space. And so take some time for quiet, for meditation, write in your journal, and go back and look over your life and what is incomplete, what is unfinished, both in wounds that haven't been healed or relationships that are still not healed, but also, what is your dream for the future? It's time to start dreaming about what Charles Eisenstein calls the more beautiful world our hearts know is true.
That's beautiful. Those are beautiful calls to action. I love that. So where can people find out more about you?
Well, my website is thecosmiccheerleader.net.
Okay.
And on that site, I have a blog. I have
You're a
several.
very good writer, by the way, Diana. I always enjoy
Thank
reading your
you.
blogs and your newsletters.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And if any of your readers are interested, they can subscribe and be on my mailing list. But I have a series there called What's Going On.
Great
And,
title.
we just touched the surface of
Yeah.
what's going on. And in that, I take a really deep look at the United States natal chart and the collective American consciousness and what needs to be healed and what our potential is, because we have the potential to lead the world into peace. So that's that. And then I also have a Facebook page, and it's called Lessons from the Heavens. You can find me on Facebook.
Excellent. So the cosmiccheerleader.net or Lessons from the Heavens. And I hope that everybody listening will explore further what you have to offer, because it's so rich and insightful. And I'm just very grateful that you chose to spend some time with me here today. And I know everybody's going to get a lot out of listening to this, and we're all going to be looking forward to December now.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Oh, thank you, Alana. It's been a pleasure.